Hello and welcome to At the Leadership Table with retired Major General Jim Hoyer. Oftentimes people hear the word leader and they think only of political leaders, but leaders come in many forms, and that's worth exploring. I'm Jim Hoyer, born and raised in West Virginia, a husband, a father, a new grandfather, and a retired military leader, serving for over 40 years in public leadership for our state and nation. Now, the most important mission I have going forward is to educate, motivate, and empower our next generation of leaders. At the leadership table with me today is a good friend and colleague from a number of years, Jason Ashworth. Jason is from Huntington, West Virginia. He currently serves as the Chief Safety Officer and a nurse practitioner for the Valley Health Network, but Jason's also served in the National Guard for over 27 years. We worked together in the Special Forces Battalion as well as in the Counter-Drug Program. Jason also served for 20 years as a police officer with the Huntington Police Department. And currently volunteers his time to help support the Hershel Woody Williams Fisher House at the Huntington Veterans Administration Hospital. Jason's a great friend, a great colleague. We've done a lot of good work together over the years, and I thank you for your service and commitment, and thank you for joining us at the leadership table today.
I really appreciate it. Just to think that I would be sitting here with you years ago really is just humbles me.
Yeah, so, neither of us thought years ago that we'd make it past 20 years in the military, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Jason, I'm going to start by asking you the same first question we ask all of our guests. Please share with us a standout moment when you learned something really important about leadership.
Well, I think there's always learning moments that kind of helps guide us. But something that it took years to probably come to surface, I didn't know that this was even happening. But, something I learned was, I think, consistency and building trust. I think those are key elements in leadership. And when I worked at the police department, I actually worked one of the high crime areas in the town, and I chose that specifically as one of the busiest, and because I lived in that area, I grew up in that kind of area. I thought, what a way just to be part of it. I kind of understand, how things work over there. And there were a group of kids right in one part of town, and I had noticed as I would drive through, would be out there playing football in the middle of the street. And I was driving through there one day. We get complaints from neighbors, hey, they were disrupting traffic, and so I go through and drive through there and see these kids, all elementary school age, out there playing football in the middle of the street. So I just drive up, and of course they're like, oh, they're going to shut us down, they're going to make us go in. And so I pull up, and one of them goes, you going to make us get out of the road? And I went, I'm closing the road. And I said, I knew it. So I parked my car, blocked the street off. I said, all right, it's time to pick sides. So we started playing pickup football in the middle of the road. We did that almost daily. I would go to roll call at 3 o'clock, 3:30 I'd be over there, we'd close the road down, and we did that consistently. So, and one of the things I think that's important that I learned from that was it came years later. I didn't know what kind of impact that it had. And I was in Blockbuster renting a movie, and look there at the person checking me out, and I recognized him, and it was probably 7-8 years later. And I see this kid that used to be over there playing football, and didn't think he would remember me. I wasn't in uniform, and so I get up there, I'm checking out, and he goes, do you remember me? And I went, I actually do. And he goes, I want to thank you for doing that. He goes, for whatever reasons, I just started, trusting people and didn't think that everybody was bad. And he goes, I'm actually going to college now. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. And it hit me. I think it's, those things that we do, maybe you don't necessarily realize at the time what impact that it has. So
yeah, and I think that's a great story about how not only a leadership moment, but also how you can have one impact on one person that makes a difference for the rest of the state, the city of Huntington, and the country, because you've given somebody the opportunity to realize they can move forward and do important things. I will say, though, you've dated both of us by saying you were in a Blockbuster, because
That's right.
Some of our listeners today would probably not know what Blockbuster is. But so you've had a pretty varied career. I remember when you came to us in the Special Forces Battalion as a young soldier. Then after you got out of that training, you got into the police department. And then I remember you coming to work for us in the Guard, again, full-time. While you were going to school, you decided to go to nursing school and then on to nurse practitioner. Tell us a little bit about that journey and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I usually kind of brush that off and say, one day I'll figure out what I want to be. But when you mentioned, some of those different careers, and we kind of touched briefly on it, some of those things, and I never really planned for any of those things. Some of them came out of a necessity when I took the job at the police department. They had benefits, and that was important, with a young family. Mm-hmm. But some of the things that I learned there, I think I carried forward, hopefully. And then as I transitioned and I realized that, being in the police department, it's a young person's game. I wanted to have a plan, and at some point, and I'm going to give a lot of credit to you, is for whatever reasons, I always wanted to be in medicine. But so I came to you and said, hey, I'd like to go to nursing school. And at the time, we were doing full-time Guard stuff. Mm-hmm. And you made it happen, and that was my segue into, going to nursing school, and with the University of Charleston, and you made that happen. And I think probably that moment, and I don't know if I ever told you this, but that was kind of the springboard for me. I guess sitting here in this chair with you right now, mm-hmm. Owe a lot to you. I think we want to build confidence, in our teams. I think you saw some things in me that I probably didn't see in myself, and just having the confidence. I was scared to death to go to nursing school. I thought, how am I ever going to make it? So, here I am, working as a nurse practitioner and as a chief safety officer. And, I think just those opportunities have really helped me be sitting right here with you.
And I'm glad to have played some small part in that level of success. So as a nurse practitioner, in the state of West Virginia, I think you're significantly important, particularly with what you guys do with the Valley system, because it's focused on rural medicine and on inner city folks who don't normally have access to care. So tell our listeners a little bit about what it's like to be a nurse practitioner in West Virginia and working to try to serve particularly that underserved population.
Well, I want to start off really by saying, I think it's just by God's grace that I'm sitting here and being able to do these things. The things that I've done before kind of prepared me for that, and I really, really appreciate it. It's one of the things that I love about Valley Health, is our mission. It's primarily to, serve the underserved population, whatever means, resources that it is. And because Valley is an FQHC, they do get subsidized somewhat by the federal government to provide those services, but it's much more than that. It's expanding, but it's still small enough that everybody kind of knows everybody still, and the mission is really important. And just as of last year, I think we took on 9 additional counties in the most rural counties in West Virginia, and getting a footprint there and providing much needed services, and there's plans really to continue those services and expand them, and they work. It's not like we're competing against other healthcare organizations. Valley actually collaborates and partners with WU. We got WU Cardiology down there. It comes to Huntington. They do a lot of stuff with Marshall University and the Health Network, and it's really, from that perspective, is providing access to care to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I really love about it.
So you also, we talked earlier about how your military career, the deployments, but more specifically your time in the Huntington Police Department has shaped how you understand and help patients better. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
I think it boils down to really being able to empathize with people. I've actually been on the streets. I've seen the unhoused, the homelessness, and a contingent of that, and a rather large contingent, is our veterans population. But I think it enables me to understand, when somebody that's never, and I'm not taking anything away from anyone that, goes straight through and maybe goes to med school or whatever and doesn't have those experiences, couldn't understand. It's just that, I've been to places where, there's no parent and there's a 2-year-old by themselves in diapers. I've seen, young people walking the streets with nowhere to go. I've seen where, homes are just turned upside down for the domestic issues or whatever. And when people come into the office and, in the back of your mind, they're not going to come out and tell you those things. A lot of times you just kind of try to find out what's going on in their lives, what's causing them to experience these, anxiety. Why are they having, some kind of symptoms that, whether it's, reflux or anxiety or whatever it is, that, what's causing that, and you can kind of understand some of those things.
So you talked about your work with veteran population. You're engaged with the Woody Williams Fisher House Foundation, and you and I both had the opportunity to actually spend time with Woody over the years, and we're both excited that they named the Fisher House at Huntington, VA in honor of Woody. But explain to our listeners a little bit about what Fisher House is and its importance to a place like the Huntington VA and our veterans.
Well, when I reached out to you earlier this year, when we actually do one of our big fundraisers, is a fundraising dinner that we have. We have, silent auction and people with tables, and, we get a lot of support from the community in those regards. But when talking to you about it, you were really already familiar with it and was, really part of originally bringing it to West Virginia. So yourself knows a lot about the foundation, and I think they're up to 100 houses by now. I think the Woody Williams Friends of Fisher House was the 92nd. It's the only one in West Virginia. When people ask me about, what is the Fisher House, what is it they do? And, I hate to say this, the only way that people can really understand it is to say, it's kind of like a Ronald McDonald House. So it provides housing for families that their loved ones are, getting, treatment at the hospital or whatever. And much in the same way the Fisher House operates. And we have the National Foundation, which, kind of supports the initial setup of these Fisher Houses throughout. And they're in Germany. We've got some, with 100 of them, there's some of them, I think there's multiples in some states, but every state at least has one. And then there are in other countries as well. I know there was a couple in Germany. But the foundation actually will provide the initial funding to basically the VA. The way they work together is the VA will give the land to the Fisher House, who then builds the house. And I think the Woody Williams House, I think the investment through the foundation was about $6 million. So then what the foundation does is gift the house back to the VA. So the Woody Williams Friends of Fisher House is actually a department within the VA down in Huntington. So that's one way that they kind of set those services up. Locally, there's a distinction, if people look at it, and it's hard because if they go to the Fisher House Foundation's website, or you type in the Woody Williams Fisher House, it'll take you to the national site. If people want to do something locally, then they can actually, because all the resources, if you either donate or volunteer, we did a lot of volunteer outreach, and people support that cause, is all the resources and stuff. If you do it directly to the house, will stay with the house. It goes to the foundation, then they disperse it, like they should, to the different places that need the resources.
And I think during the foundation dinner, you and I and others there got to hear the significance of the value of the house to veterans. In some cases, it's because veterans and family members don't have resources to be able to go and stay with their veteran while they're getting that extended care at the VA hospital. But sometimes it's people that have the ability probably to cover down and pay for that, but being in a house with other family members allows them to cope with their veterans issue much better as a team of people coming together and understanding the challenges that they all face as families. And I think one of the things I appreciate most about the work you're doing with Fisher House is we don't do enough to focus on military families and the challenges that they face. Can you just comment a little bit on why and how that spurred you to get involved in Fisher House because of the value it provides to a family member?
Yeah, absolutely. I was aware of the Fisher House, just being in Huntington, and was aware of its presence, and they were starting it up. And then I think after the first year it was open, a lady reached out to me. Her name's Terry Harden. She's active in a lot of other groups like that does a lot of benevolent fundraising. And she reached out to me to ask if I'd be interested in serving on the board there. And without hesitation, I just thought, what an honor. Being a veteran, and both of us, our kids are, in the military, deployed, they're veterans. So we know what it's like to, need that support. And I thought that your comments, your speech during that banquet dinner was spot on. It's a call to action. And I think it resonated with everyone throughout that dinner that night. It's not just this night. It's every day. It's every night. More people. This is a call to action. We need to support, our veterans. And that's one of the things that when you said that, I wanted to bring up is that that's very important that families are around. Look at any study. Having family close by while you're going through some of this stuff, helps the healing process. Which that's the other thing that sets the Friends of Fisher House and the foundation apart, is that it does focus on having family present. So I think this year alone, to date, I think we've had over 1,300 nights, 600 and some different families this year alone, at a savings to the families of about $160,000. And the other good thing about it too is, since it is through the VA, it also allows the veterans, it just doesn't have to be care at the VA. So if it's outsourced, and let's say they're getting cancer treatment or other treatments that's outsourced to local places, then they qualify for that as well. So they could be getting treatment at one of the hospitals, and family can stay there with them and be right there by their side.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things I noticed about the Fisher House Foundation and the Fisher House, that people would think, well, it's at the Huntington VA, so it's only serving people from Huntington and West Virginia. But I noticed as I was going in for the dinner, the number of license plates from Kentucky and Ohio who were coming to the foundation dinner, because it truly is a regional asset. It's serving a large population, but you also have regional support in your foundation, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So you will. It's just typical of that area of the state anyway. Is like it's such a regional area, with West Virginia and Kentucky, right there within minutes of any of that. So if you look at it from where the other Fisher houses are located, I think the next closest one is in Lexington. So we kind of have that, Lexington area east, everything, north and south of that, and encompasses all of West Virginia. There are, I won't say restrictions, but, the majority of the people are outside of about a 50-mile radius that really use those facilities. And most people rely, if they're that close to the house, then, they can probably just stay at the house and not be displaced. But yeah, so there is a regional concept to who the Fisher House serves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you our last question's two parts, because you serve the people of West Virginia and the region in two ways. One is, what is your goal for Fisher House Foundation and continuing to serve veterans programs, but also as a nurse practitioner in a federally qualified health clinic setting that serves underserved population. What's your goal for the future there as well for West Virginia?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's kind of somewhat easy to figure out. Is as far as the Fisher House itself is, things like this, are really important just for increased awareness. Especially living in a rural state. Not a lot of people even know that it's down here, that may be more up north, that may need resources like that. So, one, bringing increased awareness not only to the foundation as a whole, but specifically the Woody Williams Fisher House. Couldn't be more appropriately named. And then, as far as a nurse practitioner, Valley, like I said, our mission is to provide access to everyone, right? And that includes veterans. That includes the homeless. And although there's a whole lot of homeless, matter of fact, we participated in a homeless veterans thing several weeks ago. So I think of this increased awareness and bringing it all together, knowing what resources are. I think it helps us as we go out and talk in the community. That we have a lot of outreach teams, crisis intervention teams that Valley participates in, that kind of started from the drug epidemic, being out on the streets, but now they're also approaching a lot of veterans that are out on the streets. So this is another tool that they can go, listen, if you need help, resources, this is a place that you can go, especially if you're needing care, things like that. So I think bringing those two together, and hopefully, as things they continue to look at overhauling the VA system as well, maybe there's more opportunity for outpatient healthcare clinics to play a role with VA medicine, just to make sure that everybody gets taken care of.
Well, Jason, I appreciate all that you've done. Just from my experience of working with you, we served together in the Special Forces Battalion. We did a lot of important things there. We got to be involved as a part of our role in the Guard and your role in Huntington Police Department of actually helping stand up the Appalachia High Intensity Drug Traffic Area Task Force, which has done a lot of great things over the years and continues to do great things. Was led by a close friend of ours, Kenny Berner, starting that out. We built Homeland Security assets together in the Guard that still exists today. Hopefully will continue the country to take advantage of. And I think most importantly, though, the unique tie we have together is we both were military parents together.
Right.
Our boys served together in the same Special Forces Battalion we served
Absolutely.
in. They deployed together to Afghanistan and then came back and worked in the same unit that we worked together in on the Homeland Security side. So, and I think they've both been quite successful, maybe despite their parents.
Right.
Or their fathers,
doing it a little bit better,
yeah,
maybe.
Doing it a little bit better. So for all those things, I thank you for your service, and thank you for joining us at the Leadership Table today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. This has been At the Leadership Table with retired Major General Jim Hoyer. Did you know you can now find me on social media at RMG Hoyer? That's HOYER, or email me at rmgjameshoyer@gmail.com.